The alarms were not supposed to be real. I remember that thought hitting me before anything else. Sharper than the smoke, sharper than the shaking floor under my boots. My name is Vexta, and I was 3 months into training at Threshold Academy when the reactor drill stopped being a drill and became something that could actually kill every student standing inside that training bay. 1 second earlier, everything had been normal. Boring even. We were running a scripted failure simulation, the kind every cohort runs a dozen times before graduation. Lights dim, gravity cycles, a fake hull breach on a timer. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody has ever gotten hurt. Then the coolant regulator failed for real, and the deck tilted under gravity that had nothing to do with any lesson plan. I froze. My reflexes were fast, faster than almost anyone in that room. But speed means nothing when your mind has no plan to run. Around me, my classmates were falling apart in their own quiet ways. Mira, the girl with the perfect calm stare who could read a person's heartbeat from across a room, stood locked in place, overwhelmed by a wave of panic she had never learned to filter. Torin, built like a wall, strong enough to lift a shuttle door off its hinges, had curled into a defensive crouch that protected him from nothing. And Daniel, the human boy I had spent 3 months mocking, the one I called slow, the one I called fragile, was already moving. He did not move fast. That is the part I keep coming back to, even now. He moved with total certainty, like he already knew what the next 60 seconds were going to look like, even though none of us did. "Vexta," he shouted, grabbing my arm with a grip stronger than I expected. "Panel 7, manual override, now. You're faster than me. Go." I went. Not because I understood the plan, because in that moment, he was the only person in the room who sounded like tomorrow still existed. I sprinted across a floor that kept shifting under me, reached the panel, and started pulling wires the way he had shouted at me to, numbers and colors blending together in my head, while smoke thickened around us. Behind me, I could hear him working the room like he had rehearsed this exact disaster 100 times before. He hauled Torin toward the emergency bulkhead, even though the boy outweighed him by twice his own mass. He called Mira's name over and over, until her eyes finally focused on him, instead of the fear flooding her senses. He was rerouting 3 different students through an evacuation plan that had never existed 5 minutes earlier, adjusting it out loud as fast as it kept breaking apart in his hands. I want to explain what that looked like, because I do not think anyone who was not there will ever fully understand it. Every other species in that room had been built for a world that mostly followed rules. My people react fast because our world rewarded fast reactions. Mira's people read emotions because their world rewarded understanding. Torin's people grew strong because their world rewarded strength. But none of us had ever been built for a moment when the world simply stopped following its own rules. Daniel had. "Cross the wire from 3 to 9, he called to me, voice steady, even as another tremor rocked the floor. "Ignore the label. The label is wrong. Trust me." I did not trust him. Not yet. But I did it anyway, because there was no time left to choose anything else. Sparks jumped from the panel, and for one terrifying second I thought I had made everything worse. Then the emergency lighting flickered from red to a dim amber, and somewhere below us, a low grinding sound told me the reactor containment had finally caught. "Good," Daniel said, not even glancing my way, already moving toward the next problem. The next problem was the exit hatch, which had jammed under the same power surge that nearly killed us all. 6 students were trapped on the far side of it, banging against metal that would not budge. Torin threw his whole weight against it and barely dented the frame. I tried using the emergency crank, but the mechanism had melted just enough to lock solid. Daniel dropped to his knees in front of the hatch and studied it for exactly 2 seconds before speaking. "It's not stuck. It's still powered. The surge fried the release, not the hinge." He turned to me. "Vexta, hit panel 7 again. This time reverse it. Send the power back the way it came. That could blow the whole panel." "It will blow the panel," he said. It won't blow us. I did not have time to argue with that logic, so I trusted it instead. I slammed the reversal switch. The panel screamed with a burst of light and heat, and the hatch released with a sound like a held breath finally let go. 6 students spilled through, coughing, shaking, but alive. By the time the real emergency response teams reached the training bay, the fire suppression systems had already stabilized the room, mostly because Daniel had rerouted them himself using an old manual protocol nobody under the age of 60 was supposed to remember. He had not stopped moving the entire time, not once. Even after the danger had clearly passed, he was still checking every student, counting heads, asking names, making sure every single person in that bay knew exactly where they were and what had just happened. I sat against the wall afterward, my hands still trembling, watching him wrap a burn on his own forearm with a strip of cloth before any medic had even reached him. He did it calmly, like it was one more task on a list, not something that should have hurt as much as it clearly did. "How?" I finally asked, my voice cracking in a way I was not proud of. "How were you so calm? You could barely handle a training harness 3 weeks ago." He looked at me, and for the first time since I had met him, I saw something behind his eyes that had nothing to do with fear. "We're bad at the stuff that goes right," he said simply. "Reflexes, strength, speed, all of it. Other species do that better, always have. So somewhere along the way, we stopped trying to compete on that. Then what do you compete on?" "The part where everything falls apart," he said. "Nobody else trains for that part. Not really. Your world rewards fast decisions when the plan is working. Ours never gave us that luxury. Storms that came without warning. Systems that failed without asking permission. 10,000 years of things going wrong on a planet that never once agreed to make it easy for us. You build your instincts around the good scenario. We built ours around the bad one. So when the good scenario breaks, we're already home." I did not have a clever answer for that. I still do not, even now, years later, sitting in the officer's chair of a ship with his name listed right beside mine on the command roster. I have served beside dozens of species since that day. I have seen reflexes faster than light itself, strength that could tear a bulkhead apart with bare hands, minds that could read a room's fear before the room even knew it was afraid. All of it real, all of it impressive in its own way. But when a plan dies, when the alarms stop being scripted and start being honest, when every system that was supposed to work simply refuses to, I still find myself looking for a human first. Not because they are the strongest in the room, not because they are the fastest or the smartest or the most gifted by nature, but because somewhere in their long, difficult history, they learned something the rest of us never had to learn. They learned how to keep moving when nothing is going right, when there is no script left to follow, when every reasonable path forward has already collapsed. I used to laugh at Daniel. I used to call him slow. I used to tell him, in front of everyone, that his species was a joke among the stars, that we had only let them join out of pity. I do not laugh anymore. Because I learned, the hard way, in a burning training bay 3 months into my first year, that humans were never let into the wider galaxy as an act of mercy. They were let in because the galaxy eventually breaks its own rules. Every plan fails eventually. Every system eventually gives out, and when that moment comes, someone has to already know exactly what to do next. I know now why the stars quietly fear them, even as they smile and shake hands, and pretend to be the gentle, unassuming species everyone expects them to be. It has nothing to do with weapons, or power, or size. It has everything to do with what happens in the one moment every other species dreads the most, the moment when everything falls apart at once. That is the moment humans were built for. And I will never forget the day I watched one of them prove it, standing calm in the middle of chaos, holding an entire room together, with nothing but steady hands and a mind that refused to stop working, even when the whole world around him had already given up.